Welcome to Business Owner Tales from the Trenches, the podcast for business owners who want to see around corners and thrive financially. Your host is Carr, CEO and business owner at CornerCap. Tune in every other week for lessons learned from the trenches of entrepreneurship, business successes, and financial independence. Here's Cannon.
Hello, welcome to the show. I'm Carr.
And I'm Claudia Bettinger.
And we are your hosts for today's episode. Claudia, this is a fun episode because we're bringing someone with a non-traditional business background who has deep, incredible insights told in an original way for business owners. And we're excited to bring it to you. Why don't you introduce our guest?
Yeah, today is super exciting. We have Sandy Gennaro, a world-class rock and roll drummer who's toured the globe with world-renowned artists like Cyndi Lauper, Joan Jett, Bo Diddley, Johnny Winter, and the Monkees. He's the author of Beat the Odds and is now a national speaker on business and management using his insights from the road.
This is a fun episode. You know, Claudia, when I heard Sandy the first time a couple months ago, I went into the meeting thinking, oh, goodness, what is a drummer going to teach us about business? And he nailed it. And we right then, I'm like, we've got to bring him to the podcast. And we're so excited that he joined us. And you'll get to hear from him in a moment. As you listen to the episode, there are three things I think you want to keep in mind. Amidst all the great stories of Hall of Fame rock and rollers and legendary songs. And the first thing is, listen to how he says yes to opportunities. And it's in that part of that theme of where, you know, when do you say no to things and when do you say yes to things as a business owner? But his mindset about saying yes is key to his growth, both personally and professionally, and key to how he handles adversity. So listen to those stories in this episode. Secondly, in that theme of luck versus skill, right? When does luck prevail? When is it skill? And, you know, throughout this episode, you'll hear about chance encounters, random events. You know, it seems like luck, but actually with his mindset and his preparation, you'll see that it's not luck at all. And then the third thing just to listen to and enjoy are those lessons on leading a team, managing a business, you know, just those lessons based on his experience on the road with these legendary performers. You'll learn a little bit about what to do and what not to do. So it's a fun, great episode. Sit back and enjoy our conversation with Sandy Gennaro. Sandy, thanks so much for being on the program. Excited to have you. You've got just some great stories. You know, I do want to start with the fact that, you know, you're an entertainer. And you've performed on some of the greatest legendary stages of the world, and we'll get to that. But, you know, did you ever see yourself becoming the coach to entrepreneurs and business owners that you are now, way back when?
No, I never, ever, you know, I was already in my middle to late, not say late, 67, 68 years old. And I was wondering what I was going to do when I didn't want to go on the road anymore. Right. But as I speak about in my presentation is sometimes, you know, you have a goal in mind and you work with your work ethic and your positive outlook and you're helping people, your goal comes into focus and you eventually can reach your goal if everything works out okay. Yeah. But in some cases, the universe, or what I call the God energy, sometimes, you know, when you're in that flow of positive energy, sometimes things are put in your lap that you had no idea existed. But in the words of Mick Jagger, it's like you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometime, you just might find you get what you need. Yes. And I needed, and I wondered if I could continue my lifestyle that I'm used to in my retirement when I didn't want to go on the road with a rock and roll band. And it speaks to my presentation, how important the service to other people is. You know, not only in the leadership, being a compassionate leader or a service-oriented leader, but as a human being, keeping your eyes out. How can you put a smile on somebody's face, living with that internalized, not only when you want something, and you shouldn't do something for somebody else with any promise of anything in return. You do it to lift the other person up, to put a smile on their face.
Well, totally. And I know that is the mindset you kind of grew into, right? And it's
from a child.
Powerful. Yeah. Well, and we'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that.
But the punchline, the answer to your question is, I wanted to put a smile on on a woman in a wheelchair at this concert in San Diego, and I threw a drumstick to her. She was a handicapped woman, and the person next to her intercepted it. I could have just kept going. No, I made sure she had it. The next day, the husband sitting on the other side of the woman in a wheelchair Facebook messaged me, "Can I call you?" Again, I thought should I call my lawyer because of my drumsticks are all torn up. But again, I had the decision to make: should I blow this? Could I ghost this guy or should I engage him? I engaged him. He called me over the moon, thanks about how I made his wife feel the night before or whatever. And he was a speaker, a Vistage speaker. His name is Mike Pierce from San Diego. He goes by the name of Antarctic Mike. And he's a very successful Vistage speaker. One thing led to another. He was coming to Nashville to speak. He asked me to buy me a cup of coffee to thank me in person for the drumstick to his wife. Again, I had a choice of blowing him off, but I didn't. I met with him, and long story short, after I told him some stories about my career, he said, "You have a career as a motivational speaker. People need to hear that message." Yeah. So based on that one thing led to the next, and now I have a new business. I'm the CEO or founder of my own business. And my wife said to me recently, "How does it feel to have your name on the marquee now?"
Yeah. Your whole career, you were supporting somebody, and now your name is the one driving it. And I'll tell you, I mean, I've seen your presentations, and they are awesome. So that's why I'm excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Cannon.
And this is one thing we'll explore in this podcast: those accidental events, those accidental associations. They look like luck, but in reality, they're not the way you articulated. And that's one of the things I want to capture. So let's go way back. I remember when you were just a budding performer, and you wanted to make it big as a drummer and in the rock and roll scene, and you left New York City for LA for your big opportunity, and you got pretty discouraged pretty quick. In fact, I think there were a couple of times you were like, and every entrepreneur, business owner feels this, right? Gosh, I made a bad decision. This is not working out. Tell us a little bit about it. Yeah, so you mentally you were really struggling with that, and yet you learned something that kept you in the game.
I moved to LA to get my first big break in the music business in 1976. And after 3 years of being there, nothing was really panning out. I finally got an audition with Rod Stewart. And I thought, well, this is my opportunity. This is the key to the big time. 3,000 miles away from home and all of that. Yeah. So the song was "Tonight's the Night." I auditioned it I rehearsed it like I was going out of style. I learned it was a very simple song, but my mistake was the audition was held in a studio that had all the equipment provided, and it was a cattle call audition. It was 6 drummers sitting in the lobby, one at a time went in and played 30 seconds of a song called "Tonight's the Night" by Rod Stewart. Very simple song. When it was my turn, I could have just, like all the other drummers, went in and sat at the drum set. The band had the instruments on. Rod was in there, but I went out and got my own drum set because I was so insecure about playing on another drum set other than my own. It was the first time in my life I was asked to do that, and I was very insecure. I wanted this to be right. I wanted to have total 100% control over everything in this situation, and the drum set was one of them. Well, the fallout to that was Rod goes, "No, Sandy, just sit at the drum set." No, Rod, I'm sorry. I got to set my own drum set up. So I made him wait a half an hour. Obviously, I didn't get that gig, and I was as depressed as I ever was in my whole life. I went home. At that point in time in LA, I had this mentor called Carmine Apiece. He was a drummer for Vanilla Fudge. He was a well-known drummer, Ozzy Osbourne or whatever. I told him about that. He became my mentor. I was a big fan of his in New York, in the Vanilla Fudge. And I met him in LA and became friends. He became my mentor. I told him about the Rod Stewart debacle. He said, "Don't worry, use my name in a resume anytime you want. There'll be other opportunities for you." So what did I do there? Number one, I spent about a week and a half drowning in my own sorrow, my own little pity party I have this little good wolf, bad wolf thing in my head. The bad wolf was starting to talk real loud. "You loser, go home. That's the only opportunity. Get ready to go work, have a career at Home Depot." That's the kind of voice. So I concentrated on the positive. I did a lot of drinking for about a week, but then I started calling studios, and I realized that I had to be able to have the confidence to play on another person's drum set. So I called other studios in LA and rehearsed on their strength, brought a Walkman with some headphones and Led Zeppelin songs and Beatles songs, and just got used to playing on another drum set. I sent a resume to 50 managers as a result of that. After I climbed out of my pity party, I sent a resume to 50 managers that I really liked, the bands that they handled. One of them was Led Zeppelin's manager, Peter Grant, who was based in England. All of Led Zeppelin and Peter Grant's mail from America got funneled through the attorney's office in New York. Steve Weiss, attorney for Led Zeppelin. This is the way the God energy works. Uncontrollable by me. This has nothing to do with luck. It has something to do with divine providence. And my resume arrives. It never gets forwarded to England. It gets. It was on Steve Weiss's desk. He opens it right at the time. He opens my resume right at the time he's putting a band together around Michael Bolton.
Yeah. All right.
And he's shopping at songs of Michael's around New York labels, and now the labels are getting back to Steve, going, we want to see this yet unnamed band of Michael's songs. It was a band project. So now my resume arrives right at that time where Steve Weiss has to put a band around Michael Bolton. My resume is there. He opens the resume. He was going to throw it in the trash because he wanted a New York drummer. My resume had an LA Hollywood address on it. He turns the page and sees Carmine's name on the resume. And guess what? Steve Weiss used to be the attorney for Carmine's first band, Vanilla Fudge.
Right.
There's a personal connection there. He calls Carmine. Carmine vouches for me. Steve Weiss calls me and invites me to New York to audition for this yet unnamed band. I fly to New York, audition on a strange drum set. I get the gig, and that was my first pro recording band. It was a band called Blackjack. Yeah. So, but it all stemmed from my confidence in overcoming that issue of playing on a strange drum set. I didn't wallow in my own. I did allow a pity party, but it was only and then I climbed out of it and said, what are you going to do? You're going to drink yourself to death? You're going to get a straight job at Home Depot? Or you're going to pursue the dream that you've had since you're 14 years old? And I pursued the dream. I helped Carmine out because I said to Carmine in those conversations, I said, when he told me about the resume and I can use his name, I said, Carmine, you should go for that gig because I don't think they found a drummer yet. Rod didn't. He goes. I gave him Rod's management's number. He goes down and gets the gig, and it was in my book. He writes a testimonial that was thank you for turning me on to the biggest gig of my life. He ended up being with Rod for 7 years, 7 albums, world tours. He co-wrote Do You Think I'm Sexy? The takeaway there is Mr. Superstar Drummer, Carmine Appice, gets the gig of his life from an unknown guy. Willing to help me. He's willing to help me. So in return, I helped him. And then his association with Steve Weiss on the other end, his association helped me get my first big gig. So this is not by design. This is you're in that flow of positive energy and positive stuff happens. It's
totally. Well, you've articulated so well. So, I mean, in that you had your pity party, but then you showed tenacity. You showed the ability to adapt, right? And I know you teach this in your book, and this is what all entrepreneurs need to hear. But you also gave back, right? And you were selfless in giving back. And it looks like it was random. In fact, one person out of 50 responded, happened to be at the right time.
No, let me correct you. Ken. Nobody out of 50 responded.
Even better.
None of those managers responded. Peter Grant never saw my resume. It was opened by, so that's, you can't write it.
0 for 50, right?
That's all right.
But still it came together because of the things you were doing and the mindset you had. And that's such a wonderful point. You've also talked a little bit about how you'd mentioned how accidental things can, if you pick up on, turn into something powerful. And I know you've often shared the story just about Dave in the Doorway, for example, and how that launched so much for you, but also for him and that benefit. Tell us a little bit about that story.
The overall lesson, Cannon, is that you don't do stuff to get stuff. You don't do things to get stuff. You do stuff from a compassionate mindset, service oriented, and you let the universe, and whatever you want to call the universe, God energy, higher power, whatever, that the universe takes care of that. So, in my engagement in 1981, I'm really in a big hurry, a hot gig. I was the last one in the dressing room, and this person is standing in the doorway with a camera and a pen. And I had my road manager over his shoulder going, come on, hurry up. We had a long overnight drive. We needed to get on the bus. Yeah. But this guy is there to see the drummer. And I was always infatuated with the fact that people give value to another person signing their name on a piece of paper. So I saw this guy in the doorway, camera and a pen. I engaged him. I could have blew right by him. I engaged him. I signed his autograph. He was very, very happy. He asked me before I left, he said, can you help me get a gig in New York City? Because I'm a bass player here in Connecticut. And I gave him my home number, my home address. And I said, send me a cassette of your playing because I can't recommend you unless I hear you play. And he couldn't believe that Sandy Gennaro was giving him my home number, whatever. I said, no big deal. Just send me a cassette. I went on the bus, got home from that tour. His cassette was in the mail. I listened to it. It wasn't that good, but I kept my promise and recommended him. And 2 years later, he called me and he says, I found a singer in Queens. I want you to be the drummer in the band. Your personality, your drumming style would fit perfect. I said, Dave, I cannot join a baby band. I'm coming, I'm riding to Winnebago again. You're asking me to share rooms again. And, we're all
done that, right?
I've seen the movie already, and with all due respect, everybody's new project is earmarked to be the next big thing, but the odds are incredible. Sandy, just come down in the studio and meet this woman. We're doing our first record. So I went down to the studio. It turned out to be Cyndi Lauper, been working on the first record, and she asked me to play the side stick, which she wanted the snare drum to sound like a clock on one of these songs that she was writing. She wrote the lyrics to. So she asked me if I could make the snare drum sound like a clock, which I really didn't understand what that meant. But the producer said, side stick is you hit the side. And because she said she had this line in the song, when the clock ticks, I think of you. And the song was actually Time After Time. So she wanted a live person to play. She could have put it on with the computer, like a lot of the other songs on that record. Mm-hmm. So I played on a strange drum set, and all I had to do was play the side stick. The producer goes, just go in the you have any problem playing on a strange drum set? I said, no.
No, I don't. Yeah.
Nope, I don't.
Learn that one. Yeah.
So yes, put the headphones on. I'll give you a cue. I went to play 2, 3, and 4 of the measure with the side stick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and I'm hearing the lyrics. And in all honesty, when you first lay eyes on Cyndi, you think that she's a little spacey, a little bit flighty. But then I'm listening to the lyrics as I'm waiting for my cue, and it's like if you're lost, you can look and you will find me. If you fall, I will catch you. I'll be waiting.
Yeah.
Time after time. And it talks about consistency time after time after time. And it talks about support. It talks about I'm there for you anytime you want. And it kind of raised my eyebrows. So I got the cue, played on Time After Time. I was asked if I wanted to join the band. And basically hearing those other songs, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, and all through the night she played me little bits of the songs that we're working on. And I decided right then to make a leap of faith, even though she was a brand new, unproven artist. And it was one of the best decisions I made in my whole life. But it comes from Canon. It comes from me, a seemingly unimportant encounter, a seemingly insignificant encounter. This was a fan in a doorway. I signed a piece of paper for him, took a pose for a picture, and I ended up getting the biggest gig of my life. That's the half of it. During that Cyndi Lauper tour, I met the person that's upstairs, and we're together 39 years.
Right. So that's the best gift, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a gift. It's a gift that I'm so grateful, and I get emotionally involved when I think about think about the crossroad where if I blew that guy off in the doorway, I would have never had the Cyndi Lauper gig. And that basically put me on the map in the music business, because she used to introduce us first and last name every gig. Yeah. And not only that I met the woman, my soulmate, that's upstairs right now.
Yeah.
We have a beautiful.
But what I love about that story you just told, you, like you said, insignificant encounter. So it seemed, you ended up offering to help and listen to these tapes and forwarded Rod Stewart and help Dave, who 2 years later came back to help you, right? So A, it took some time, but B, Dave wasn't the only, it sounds random, right? Gosh, what a great thing. You helped that one guy. In fact, you've probably helped hundreds of people like that.
Right.
You just don't know which one's going to matter, right? And so,
that's correct.
So I often ask people, is it luck or skill, right, that matters in these encounters? That sounded lucky. Is it lucky?
It's not lucky. It's not lucky. It's not lucky. It's living with a spirit of how can I make you fortunate for having crossed my path. In other words, just give, just have a spirit of giving, and you will get. You don't give for the get, you give for the give.
Let's pivot a little bit. And a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners will relate to this. When you first started as a musician, and the punchline to me that I take from this is the power of saying yes, right? And things happen in unexpected ways. But, when you were starting a freelance musician, your income was lumpy and you were like, gosh, I need something more steady than that. And you were struggling, right? And so, but a series of events happened. How did you address what seemed to be a short issue of like, how do I get a little bit more steady stream of income? But it expanded into so many things. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Well, you mean in terms of it's just having the tenacity to keep going, and it's when there's problems, when people have problems on their way to the goal, the problems happen to make you a better person. The problems happen for you to learn how to do something differently or better than before, or maybe pivot to do something. It's the universe telling me, well, you got to learn a little bit, Sandy. Maybe you're not ready to be on a big stage yet, so you got to go through another couple of years of playing the clubs and getting home at 4 a.m, setting up your own stuff and all of that, and taking a cab and trying to get a cab with the 5-piece drum set and all.
Right. Well, right. You can't force it, right? What you're saying is, you can't force it. You've got to align and kind of stay in the game and mix. And what I was referring to specifically, there's a guy named Rob Wallace, I think, with the Collective.
Rob Wallace.
And you were like, all right, I'm a freelance drummer. My income's lumpy. Is there, what else can I do? And I think you came across a guy named Rob Wallace.
I did come across a guy named Rob Wallace. And this is, again, a spirit of service. I'm going to backtrack a little prior to Rob Wallace. Why did I meet Rob Wallace? Because I got a call from a guy that I had no idea. He got my number from a mutual friend, asking me to fill in on an oldies gig he was having 2 days later on a Saturday. Well, this is a Wednesday. His drummer had passed away. He was a bass player and musical director for this oldies gig. He needed a drummer. I didn't want to do it. No money.
I don't want to do this, right?
I did the gig because he said, Sandy, if I can't find a drummer, you're the last guy in Manhattan that I can call. If I have to cancel this gig, I lose my job. So I said, I'll go ahead and do it. No money, carry my own drums, 2 hour.
Sign me up, right? Yeah, exactly.
All right. So I did it. I did the gig. Two or 3 months later, he calls me back. This is the karma. He calls me back and says, thank you for helping me out. But now I got hired to be the bass player, musical director of this band that's doing a reunion tour this summer of '87. Who is it? The Monkees. Okay, great. So Now I did the Monkees. I got contracted to do the Monkees tour. Okay. This is an example of you bring a shovel, you get a dump truck back. Now rehearsing for that first Monkey tour, I lived in an apartment in Manhattan. I had to find a place to rehearse on a drum set. I called this music school in Manhattan called the Collective School of Music. It was, at the time, it was, 6th Avenue between 14th and 15th Street in Manhattan. And I went there, rehearsed the Monkey stuff on their drum set, paying for the time. The gentleman by the name of Rob Wallace was sitting behind the desk. He was the owner of the Collective, or one of the owners of the Collective at the time, taking my money. What were you doing in that room, Sandy? You sound, or sir, what were you doing? And I said, I'm rehearsing, I'm going on the road with the Monkees. He goes, did you ever think about teaching? And I said, no, I never thought about teaching. He goes, well, You'd make a great teacher. We need a rock faculty guy here. Would you be willing to try? I thought about what my mother said, even though I hardly knew how to read music or whatever, never taught a lesson before in my whole life. She said, Sandy, if you ever want to learn how to swim, jump in the deep end of a pool and you'll learn how to swim really fast. I said, you know what, Rob? I'll give it a try. Call me. Let me know a couple of weeks before you get off the road. I'll set you up with some students. That started a 27-year teaching career. Now, all of a sudden, in between tours and in between albums, I had my way to keep the lights on.
Right.
And I'm teaching the instrument. I wasn't going to Home Depot to keep the lights on. I was teaching the instrument. Mm-hmm. And I was teaching the instrument for about 20 hours a week. And in turn, I got better as a drummer. I learned how to read. In order to teach people how to read drum music, I had to learn how to read. I became a really good drummer, a good reader. And now I was able to have the confidence enough to accept reading chart gigs, which I never had the confidence to accept before because I didn't know how to read charts, but now I do. And in addition to that, I created this video called Drum Basics. So not only did that one gig, that Tokens gig, that oldies gig for Jerry Renino, the bass player, lead to one Monkey tour, which was Thanks Enough. But I did every reunion tour, almost every reunion tour from '87 until Davy Jones passed away until in 2012. Every reunion tour. Now I have, in addition to that, all of those tours, I had a 27-year teaching career. On top of now, I was able to keep the lights on. On top of being now a faculty member, I produced this video called Drum Basics. It was a drum instructional video on VHS at the time, and very successful. Warner Brothers picked up on it. And I got an advance from the collective. I repaid the advance, and now the contract is very similar to a recording contract. Once you recoup the advance, you start getting a royalty. And I started getting a royalty because Warner Brothers distributed. Not only that, but the Yamaha Drum Company picked up on Drum Basics and put it now a DVD of Drum Basics, my instructional video in the box of every new Yamaha drum set that was sold around the planet.
Yeah.
Very, very lucrative. So again, when you think back, if I would have said, you know what, Jerry, I don't want to do that gig, man. I don't want to, I would have lost out on all of that favor because I did one gig. Yeah. It's not that I just got one Monkey tour in repayment. I got several Monkey tours in repayment. I got a teaching career, and
it's amazing. Go ahead. Yeah.
The punchline is when my wife became pregnant in 1993. We had our first child in July of '94. We closed on our house on Staten Island in August of '94. We were parents for 1 month. Yeah. August of '94. When did I get my first royalty check from that video? September of '94.
Wow. Yeah. Good timing. Because when you were under stress, right? And that came at a good time. I bet you loved getting that. What I love about that story is not only saying yes to opportunity, but it's listening to the market, right? I mean, one thing started happening, but you were listening, you were open. And I think also, just to your credit, smart to recognize how to ride and build an opportunity, right? And many entrepreneurs have to do that. They have to pivot when they hear something in the market. Hey, didn't expect that. Maybe say no if it truly has no connection, but if it's got a connection that you can kind of ride and build on, beautiful story. The last thing I'll say that I love, you also learned to be a public speaker in this teaching process, and it led to your second career in a way, I think.
Well, yeah, because with being involved in the school, there was I taught private drum lessons, one-on-one. I taught group sessions. I taught rhythm section, and then I inaugurated the music business program, because a lot of the questions I was getting from my students, these young kids, were going, hey, what's per diem? Hey, who buys my drums? Who buys my drum heads and my sticks if I'm on the road? Who pays for the, what's publishing? So I said to the director of the school, Rob Wallace, I said, we need a curriculum, because it wasn't just drum lessons that the school taught. They had a 2-year curriculum. It was an accredited drum school, music.
It's awesome.
So I inaugurated the music business program, and I taught in front of groups like twice a semester in front of them. And they opened that particular seminar, the music business seminar, to the public. They put a flyer in the lobby, and for a $10 fee, you get it. So some times I had like 200 people in
that's amazing.
Performance space at the school. Yeah.
That's great. Well, let's pivot again, because there's so many great things. So you've had a chance to work with some legendary performers who we all know: Cyndi Lauper, Joan Jett, Bo Diddley, many others, Michael Bolton. I'm just curious, what can we learn from a managerial and a treating people perspective from some of those legendary performers? If there were 2 or 3 lessons you like to highlight, what did you?
Okay, well, one lesson: all of the Hall of Famers that I've worked for, and you mentioned Bo Diddley, you mentioned Joan Jett, you didn't mention Johnny Winter, who's a Blues Hall of Fame, and the Mamas and Papas, California Dreamin' and all that. They're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Cyndi Lauper is number 5, about to go in. She's going to go in eventually. And the thing I learned from them is they all appreciate and let everybody know, their audiences, their customers know how much they appreciate their band. They all highlight the band. Everybody, the Hall of Famers that I work for, always travel with the band. They stay in the same hotels as the band. They introduce their band. They make their band feel like they're an important part of the organization's success. And that's the important thing. They're not just, and I've worked for some bosses before, and I'm not going to mention any names because they don't deserve the publicity. But I worked for some people before that the bands, I've been told by an artist, Sandy, drummers are a dime a dozen, pal. And if you don't walk the line, you're out of here. There's 50 guys that want your gig. Do I feel important in that scenario?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
No. So they make their people feel really that they're a valuable part of the organization. They sit there. Cindy wrote a handwritten note to my mother, an autograph for my mother on an 8x10. Dear Sadie, your son is great. So what does that do for my mother? That's like a validation for all the crap I put her through. Now her son is playing with the biggest artist in 1984. She was as big as Taylor Swift is in 1984. And not only that, when I saw how my CEO felt about my involvement in her band, Sadie, your son is great. XX. I wanted to work extra hard for Cindy.
Yeah.
So that's when you engage your people, because in recognition, Cannon, is the cheapest, most effective way to inspire performance in your people. Recognition, a handwritten note. I know some CEOs that for Christmas time, they wrote a handwritten note to their people that did a great job. And they fold the handwritten note with a little gift card, or they put the handwritten note with a little bag of popcorn, and whatever, some sort of personal thing, not an email, not one of those pre-printed Christmas cards, just something handwritten. And it makes it does your business good, because your people that you recognize want to do their job better because they know their job is important to the success of the company.
Yeah.
And when you make somebody feel that they're expendable, hey, if you don't like it, get out of here. We get somebody else. They're going to just work for the paycheck. They don't give a crap about the success of the company because they don't give a crap about you.
Oh, it's wonderful. Just that recognition, and like you said, it creates loyalty and the spirit of being part of a team and part of the success.
Correct. So be transparent.
Yeah. That's
lesson 1. Engage your people. Number 2 is that one lesson I learned from Joan Jett, and Joan Jett is one of the smartest business person I've never, the public persona is one thing, but she gets on the bus every morning with the Wall Street Journal business section folded under her arm, and the magazine Cranes, which is like an investment, some sort of financial. And she's still involved with the same management 55 years later from an all girl band in LA. She ends up in the Hall of Fame. So you talk about a mindset, and you talk about tenacious mindset and going like this. If you just want to get into my pants, well, screw you. I'm going to. And she said to me, hey, Sandy, everybody gets a bonus in my band. And she used to always have one-on-one lunches with the band. Like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about the sequencing of the songs. Are you having any problems? She used to try to head off a problem before it became an issue, which is something, she didn't wait for something to blow up as an issue. She said to me, everybody gets a different bonus. Everybody in the band gets a different bonus. I go, why, Cindy? Joan, if we all perform the songs? She goes, yeah, the songs are one thing, but you're on stage with me for an hour and a half. There's another 22 and a half hours that we're on the road together. And how you act in those 22 and a half hours. You can be a stellar drummer or a stellar bass player on stage with me. Yeah, you deserve a bonus. But what if you get too drunk at a club after the gig and you manhandle or you get into a brawl in a club? That's going to reflect on my brand, she used to say.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I metamorphosized that canon into business. You're going to give a salesperson a bonus because they exceeded their quota for the year. Oh, look, you expanded your quota. But how did they get those sales? How did they get those numbers? Were they dishonest about your product or service to magnify the value of when it isn't true? Did they talk negatively about a competition service or product to get anything? Did they say anything just to get the client or the customer to sign the name on a to make a deal? That's not the way to get sales. So that salesman doesn't deserve so it's not. She used to reward not only the what but the how you attain the what.
And and it was a long-term view of the brand too, right? It wasn't just for that night, right? It was like building the brand for the long term.
Of course, yeah. You have to see how the performance in whatever area of your company, how a performance aligns with the culture of the company. It's not just the performance; it's how it aligns with the big picture and your mission. And yeah, and then another thing I talk about in my presentation is how a drummer. The role of a drummer, the role of a CEO, or the role of a leader of a team within a management team within a company is very similar to the role of a drummer in a rock and roll.
Well, that's where I wanted to end up. I mean, I could go all day with you. I didn't get it, but if we were just going to have one more question for today, which is, what does a drummer teach us about leading an organization? And I love your answer there, and that's kind of where you were going.
Well, the drummer is the most important person on that stage, unequivocally. Musically, technically.
You mean more important than the lead singer, more important than the lead guitarist, the rhythm guitarist?
Well,
really?
I'm talking about musically speaking. All right, the lyrics and the song is kind of like a separate thing, but the performance of those songs, the music involved, the foundation of the song is the music provided for the band. The vocal is like the icing on the cake.
Sure.
But the foundation, and the bottom of the foundation is the drummer, and the consistency of the drummer is very, very important. The consistency, the drum beat, and how I analogize it to, or metamorphosize it to corporate, is that you, as the leader of the company, CEO, founder, or management within that company, different teams within that company, you are the most important person in that team. The team goes as you go. The company goes as you go. The culture emanates as you are the leader. The leader, the boss can't blame people for the only person to blame for a toxic culture is the person at the top of the totem pole.
Yeah.
Even though I'm the most important person on the stage, I'm in the back. I'm not in the front, pounding my chest. I'm in the back in a climate, in a spirit of support for my people. When I provide a drum beat, I count it off. When I provide a drum beat, that drum beat for corporate is the mission, the culture, and your goal as a leader is to bring everybody on that proverbial stage in sync with you to perform a common objective, all in line with the mission. And that is the drum beat that you provide. Another key element for drummers is to be consistent.
Okay.
The count off and the tempo, that sets the tempo. and then you start playing the song, that tempo has to be the same throughout all the different changes that happen within that one song. The dynamic changes, the section changes, verse, chorus, intro, outro, solo, whatever. That tempo is the common thread. So you as a leader has got to be consistent day in and day out, regardless of you made a major acquisition or your shareholders are unhappy because the quarter was that, whatever the situation, up or down, you got to be consistent because tomorrow's another day.
Yeah.
And that's something basically I learned from somebody, Derek Jeter, who interviewed after a game. He would go 5 for 5 and hit the game-winning home run, and he would go, "Yeah, it's great. I'll enjoy it tonight, but tomorrow's another day." And then on another day, he goes 0 for 5 and strikes out with the tying run on third base, and he goes, "Yeah, I learned something today, but tomorrow's another day. I'll get to redeem myself." So no matter what happened, he's consistent.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you convinced me. I remember when I saw you present this, and even today, you're right. How can the drummer really be the most important? But he's setting the beat, he or she setting the beat, and consistency. And that is what a business leader has to do for their organization, whether you're a founder or CEO or whatnot, because without that, everybody gets off plan.
Absolutely. And you have to serve the song as a drummer, as a leader.
Serve the song. Yeah.
To serve the song, regardless of what happens. You got, and and you have to serve it authentically. You can't serve it because it sounds good. You can't, you have to be authentic to the core of your being. You have to be real consistent, and
Well, and I remember, we won't have time to go into it today, but I remember you talked about Tom Dowd one time told you, "Hey, you're doing a great frill there, but you know what? That doesn't serve the song. Let's not do that." And you're like, "Oh man, I got it." Yeah.
Right. Save it for your critics. Tom Dowd, I love him, man. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to talk about Tom Dowd, but
yeah, well, we'll save that for the next one then, because I'll just say you have many stories, and they're not only entertaining, they're deep and they're personal, and they give you great insights uniquely into running a business. So if people want to learn more about you and about your presentation, how can they do that? I know you've got a book out there, which I've read. It's great. I hand them out to people. How can they learn more about you?
Well, my website is www.sandygennaro.com, and it's the word Sandy with a Y, and then the spelling of the last name is Genn, like Nancy, ARO.com. There's a lot of information about my speaking. There's a lot of information about my professional rock and roll career on that, a lot of videos and stuff like that. I do have a book called Beat the Odds in Business and in Life, and you can go to my website to get a signed copy of that. And I'm always interested in speaking to people about sharing my presentation with a live drum set in a conference environment, in a corporate meeting, awards banquet, stuff like that. I've been doing, in addition to Vistage organization meetings, I've been doing that conference stuff. And
I tell you, I do want to go to a presentation where you're actually using your drums to really drive home the point too, because you've done it on the tabletop. I've seen you do that, and it's.
So you haven't seen a presentation with the drum set?
I haven't seen the full drum set. I've seen you in action with your drums. It just the sticks on the table, which works fine, right? Your concept of the rhythm and the beat and how it changes. Right. It's a powerful way of communicating the message. So
awesome.
Sandy, thank you for being on the show. This has been so much fun. This is exactly what I was hoping to be able to bring forward. Awesome. You've got legendary stories. We really appreciate the time, and we'll stay in touch.
I appreciate it, Ken. And thank you so much. You and your family have a great holiday and a very successful, happy, healthy 2024.
Right. And you too as well. Thank you. All right, Cannon and Claudia back with you in the studio. Claudia, of course, just a great episode. And I love the way underneath it all, Sandy talks about his mindset, right? And that's really what the podcast highlighted. Just that mindset of success. And we'll get into the 3 things we thought we would take away and highlight here. But first, just what'd you think of the episode?
I loved this episode. His perspective is so unique as a drummer and a musician with a rock and roll background. He's really able to see things differently than the traditional business owner. And I think that brings a really new perspective to it and gives him such authority to speak in the business and management space.
Totally true. It surprised me, like I said, the first time. I mean, what does a drummer know about business? Well, he articulates with his mindset, philosophy, and his preparation, how his insights in a unique way absolutely apply. Yes. And they're fun to listen to, right? Stories are always fun to listen to, and it just works so well. Well, I thought we'd highlight three things. The first one is that space helping entrepreneurs know what to say yes to and what to say no to. Sandy, with his mindset, talked about how you give for the give, right? His mindset was just, he was absolutely committed to helping others without an expected return. So he often said yes to random events, right? And we'll come back to that. But first, let me say, we spend a lot of time talking with entrepreneurs about the power of saying no, right? What do you say no to? Saying no helps you so much with make sure your focus is correct and staying focused. It helps you minimize distractions and avoid going down paths that are a waste of time. So saying no is important. But yet Sandy here in a very powerful way is saying what to say yes to. And it works so well, not only for him, but for all of us with this mindset, when you're saying yes to those things that are connected to your core purpose.
Right.
And the beauty of his saying yes and being helpful like he is he's just keeping an open mindset to change. And he says back when he was talking about how he was creating a better income stream back when it was lumpy, his openness to saying yes to opportunities helped him grow into very powerful new business models. And he talked about those. And not only to develop money, but he also ultimately improved his drumming skills and opened up new skills for down the road. So the key to me is that it was all tied to his core purpose to help him be the best drummer and to help others. Everything revolved around that. You did notice there, I noticed he said no to working at Home Depot, right?
Right. Yep.
So he didn't lose the dream. But I just thought it was wonderful how he articulated what he said yes to and why to his core purpose. The second thing I thought was cool was just how his mindset helped him handle adversity that every entrepreneur and business owner will encounter. And it helped him navigate those unexpected dislocations and transitions. And I know you enjoyed the Rod Stewart audition.
Yeah,
what did you think of that?
Absolutely. Well, I think it just demonstrates that so well that, he came to audition for Rod Stewart with his drum set, obviously didn't get it. And instead of letting that deter him, he learned the lessons from it. He didn't sit in the failure, but he took what he could from it and then ultimately made an incredible career out of it. So I think that that's really important for all business owners. You're not going to do everything perfectly the first time, but you have to learn from it and continue to get better. Yeah.
You remember he said something like the universe is saying you have to learn something else first before you can actually do what you want to do. And that was just a beautiful way of saying, you can't control everything.
Right.
And you can't even force an outcome. And this is so helpful for business owners, and I think about it all the time, when you hit an obstacle, you can't force an outcome, right? You've got to pivot, you got to respond, you got to adapt. And, he talked about the dream. In business world, we'll talk about that being the vision and the what, and you don't want to compromise on that, but you absolutely have to respond on the how. How do you get there? And he articulated a beautiful way of doing that. The third thing that was I thought we'd highlight is just those lessons for business owners from the road and from the legends he circled with. And obviously, he does a great job talking about how recognition and motivation it ends up helping the band feel like a part of their success. Talked about that beautiful Cyndi Lauper letter that he wrote to his mom, and how, with Joan Jett, just how she rewarded the how as much as the what to make sure brand and culture were intact. He did great stories there. But to me, the most fun was just what he taught CEOs as the drummer.
Absolutely. And he speaks about how being the drummer is the most important part in the band because you are setting the beat for everyone and you have to be consistent and supportive. And ultimately, leaders in business have to do the same thing. Founders and CEOs need to set the beat for their company and learn to be consistent and supportive the same way that a drummer does.
Yeah, I loved hearing him snap in the background of setting the tempo, setting the beat, staying consistent. And I don't know if he mentioned it in this podcast, but I've talked to him about it before. Drummers lead from the back.
Right.
And the good CEOs offer that support and lead from the back too. They don't have to be front and center or the front person. And he also talked about being authentic to the song. When he would go off on a riff and try to do something creative, yes, it showcased him, but it might not have been best for the song. Right. And that's just a wonderful lesson for leaders and business owners too. Stay authentic to the business. Do what's right for the business. So, well, Claudia, thanks for joining me in the studio. This was a great episode, a lot of fun, and we will see everyone on the next one.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Are you looking for more resources to help your business? Visit cornercappodcast.com for our free ebooks to help you plan for inevitable transitions in your business. Tune back in every other week for a new episode.